a lot of boats violate this simply because that rule didn't exist when the boat was manufactured.
Today, we're talking to Patrick from RCR Yachts. If you haven't heard of them, RCR Yachts has been a fixture on the Great Lakes sailing scene for over 50 years. They're one of North America's most experienced and respected full service sailboat sort of operations. They sell new and used sailboats and powerboats, operate several boat yards of their own and marinas, and provide service and repair work. RCR is also, if you watched the Great Loop episode last Monday, it's one of the facilities at the western end of the Erie Canal that can step and unstep your mast. As the buying and selling season is starting to heat up because spring is here, let's talk to a yacht broker. I think the big question that everybody has right now, and I've been talking to a lot of people in the boat yards as we go to take the covers off our boats and all that stuff. What's hot right now? What's selling this year? Like, what are you seeing in the market?
Interestingly, as far as sailboats are concerned, this is one of the years where we see the fewest used sailboat listings that we can recall in recent memory. The ones that we do get that go really quickly, the ones that are, I would say, in the greatest demand, are the boats that have been really well maintained. Boats with diligent owners, with maintenance records, the things that you really look for when you're buying a used sailboat, something that inspires confidence. The maintenance is done, it's clean, it appears like it's been kept in shipshape condition. Those are the boats that really don't last too long on the used market.
Right. Is
Those are the
that
ones that are selling.
right? Right. Is that kind of limited to just newer boats like sugar scoop production style boats, or is that kind of across the board? Is that like the older boats, the Tartans and the old Catalinas and stuff as well?
As far as styling is concerned, what customers are looking for, I would say those are desirable trades for sure. A lot of people like the sugar scoop concept. A lot of people like the access to the water. And that's something that you see reflected in the new boats too, with the drop down platforms. That is the hallmark of modern design. A lot of the new sailboats, if not all of the new sailboats, feature something like that, where there's close access to the water. If you think about 80s, late 70s boats with those reverse transoms, no access to the water save for a skinny little ladder. That's not really what people are looking for, although those do make great boats for people just getting into sailing. Somebody who is looking to either step up into a larger boat or something that they keep in the water for a longer amount of time, that's generally a good buy for them.
Right on. Right. And then I guess the alternative to that question is what's not selling?
Boats that are getting old are getting really difficult to sell, even if the price is low. Boats from the 70s, the 80s, I like the old classic look of the interior woodwork too, but they're getting difficult to sell for a few reasons. First of all, financing is almost impossible on boats that are older than 20 years. It can be done generally not through a conventional ship loan. Insurance requirements change too, and this is kind of a subject that is maybe worth unpacking a little bit. Insurers are all different in what they're looking for in terms of what they're going to insure and who they're going to insure. Even some marinas have put restrictions on the ages of boats that they'll allow in their facility. So these factors sort of conspire together to make the older boats a little less desirable for most folks.
Yeah, people
Not
have
to mention the fact that the creature comforts are lacking in the older boats compared to now. If you think back to the 1990s, it doesn't seem like that long ago, but it's 30 plus years now. Air conditioning on a boat was a massive luxury. Now it's standard features on most new boats coming out of the factories.
no kidding. Yeah, I think we see a lot of boats around here. Like what's really hot around here is like on the cheap end is like a Hunter 380. We see the Hunter 380 sell like crazy because it's sort of one of those first 90s boats that had the sugar scoop in the aft cabin and factory air conditioning. And it's just like an easy lake boat to own.
Yeah.
You're out of Ohio, right? So what is your job exactly? You're selling boats?
We're dealers for new boats. We sell Beneteau sailboats, power boats, back cove power boats, J boats, not in the Ohio market, but in Lake Ontario, New York, Pennsylvania area, we sell those. We also broker boats for people. So if you're looking to sell your boat, or if you're looking for a boat, you don't want to spend the money on a new one, you want something used, we can help in those areas too.
Right on. Let's say I ask you to help sell my boat. How are you guys determining the value of a boat?
It's a good question. A lot of it goes to what the market forces determine. So we can pull up lots of information on boats that have sold that are similar to yours. We can give you the history back over several years. And boats depreciate kind of like cars do, but not quite at the same rate. Obviously, we're holding on to our boats a lot longer than we're holding on to our vehicles. Therefore, we get much more use out of them. Couple that with the fact that up here in the Great Lakes, we have a 6 month season. So we're really using the boat half a year when we're talking about a season. We can price boats based on what the market demands. Also, the condition of the boat probably speaks a lot. But I would caution people, just because you put all kinds of new stuff on your boat, maybe you added your own air conditioning, you're not necessarily going to recover that value. Certainly, it goes a long way towards making the boat presentable, appealing to a buyer, but it's not necessarily a one-for-one recoup on the sell side.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. If somebody's looking to sell a boat, um, and we see the private listings on Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist and things like that, what's the benefit of them coming to you, going to a broker instead?
That's a good question. Brokers, there's a lot of different yacht brokers in the world. Some are just there to make a buck. Some are there to make a relationship. I think that when you consider the idea of listing your boat with a broker, you really ought to find out who the broker is, who they're working for, and what their backgrounds are. Here in the United States, there are only two states that have any sort of a certification requirement for brokers. That's California and Florida. All the other states, it's anybody's guess. So look for a brokerage that is affiliated with an ethics based ethos. Our particular brokerage is with CPYB, the Certified Professional Yacht Broker. Only 10% of yacht brokers in North America are certified that way. The idea is that we can help you do all the contracting, do all the financial side of it. We can also provide some technical knowledge too. Brokers who know the industry, understand boats. They don't just look at a boat like something that's a commodity to be sold. We understand the systems. I had a call with a customer just a few hours ago who was asking questions about plumbing systems and through hulls and packless sealing systems on a new boat that they purchase, or a new boat for them, a used boat, but that they're using for the first time. And so being able to provide guided, reasoned information to help somebody out. I mean, that's really what we're trying to do, is get people involved in boating, something that we enjoy. Getting time on the water is the most important thing. Being able to help them through that process, both to list the boat, to sell the boat, and then to own the boat is really what I think a good broker is able to do for someone.
Right on. I have so many questions for you. I'm all over the map. My brain's going crazy. You had
Well, there's
mentioned,
so much to talk about. It's kind of exciting.
yeah, yeah, especially because like we both live up here on the Great Lakes and it's season now, right? Like you guys got
Oh
to be
yeah.
ready to, everything's about to pop off with like all the covers are coming off. I see Yacht World listings are starting to get more aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
It was all like a month ago, price drops across the board on Yacht World, and now I'm
Yeah.
starting to see new boats like over your side and then in Toronto and Lake Ontario. Um, you had mentioned depreciation, and correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is the big depreciation points in these boats are number one, the off the lot sort of I bought it brand new and sell it, a year later or something. So there's that depreciation of it's not new anymore, which is natural, I think. But
True.
then I'm seeing around 10 years, there's another drop off in the value of the boat. And I can't think of any technical reason for that other than people are sort of wanting boats that are less than 10 years. But then 20 years is a big one for a lot of reasons. And you mentioned insurance, getting loans for boats. I know a lot of, you called it a ship loan. So when it hits 20 years, these lenders are saying, we're not going to give you a, 150, $250,000 loan for that boat. So like sort of off the lot, 10 years, 20 years, is there anything I'm missing?
No, you're pretty much right on. And just to add on to the point about a ship's mortgage or a ship's loan, the 20 years is subtracted from the age of the boat too. So if you've got an older boat, You manipulate the loan terms that way a little bit. But I think you're right. You do get some depreciation on a new boat right away. Not quite to the same extent. A lot of people like to compare it with a purchase of an automobile where you drive it off the lot and 10 minutes later. That's not quite the case with new boats. There's still a lot of value. And I don't know the science on this, but I suspect that it has a lot to do with the fact that there are fewer boat manufacturers in existence today than there were 30 or 40 years ago. There was a time when you had 20 different companies all building boats at the same time. Those boats are all, those companies are out of business, and those boats are all older, and now you've got a limited amount of inventory. It's kind of an interesting puzzle. Where do these boats go when they're all done? So if you bought a new boat today, of course it depreciates a little bit, but we find that owners are using their boats for 4 or 5 years if they bought a new one, and are still getting a substantial amount of that value back if they go to sell.
Right, right. It's almost like it's not like buying a car with the big drop off. It's closer to buying a house. Um,
That's a good comparison. Although houses tend to appreciate in value over time. I think
right
that's a
now,
function of the real estate market. We
yeah,
don't see too much of that with boating. There was a little bit of that during the pandemic times when people were getting inflated prices for their boats because the demand was so high. But generally, that's typically not how that goes.
right, right. And we talked a little bit about insurance. So when I go to insure a boat, do you know, or can you talk to me about what the insurance company wants from me as the boat owner?
Yeah, depends on your insurer. There are insurance companies who have some requirements. These are mainly, I think, insurance companies that specialize with marine products, but they want some confidence that their owners have some ability. So ASA certificates, licenses, things like that certainly help. I've also heard that some insurance companies limit the amount of upgrade size. So if you had, let's say, a 30-foot boat and you wanted to buy a 50-foot boat, an insurance company might say, maybe not so fast, maybe something in between first before you make that jump. But every insurance company has different rules. Some require surveys, some really don't care. It just depends. And I think it's wise for consumers to shop around and find what insurance requirements exist for their boat, for their needs.
I had heard a sort of a funny story that there was a couple down in the Caribbean. I talked to a lot of folks that are going to live the dream, like, take off into the
Yeah.
sunset. And they were trying to buy a boat. It was an Island Packet 38 or a 380. So they got a little trouble from their insurance company because it was under 40 feet. And the insurance company said, because of all the hurricanes and tropical storms and damaging weather in the last decade or so, they would prefer that their clients buy 40 plus foot boats. That strikes me as like, wow, like you want me to buy a bigger boat.
Yeah, bigger than I want. Yeah, that's something I think I heard it on this channel actually. I heard you talking about that at one point. But yes, that goes back to every company has a certain set of requirements, and I think it depends on the use case too. If you've got a dreamer who's going out there and they're going to do it, they're going to do that circumnavigation they've been talking about. You probably are in a different echelon of insurability than somebody who just goes out on the weekends.
Yeah, yeah. Um, can you talk to me about the cost of a brand new boat versus the cost of buying a relatively new used boat? Like, is there more value in me buying the brand new one, or should I buy the 5-year-old boat?
It depends on your finances. I think if you can afford a new boat, new boats are going to do things that older boats just don't do. The designers, the builders that are still in business are really focused on what customers have demanded the boats have aboard. And that really just drives everything that they do. You might be able to make some compromises with an older boat. Certainly, I think the budget is the number one concern here. New boats are expensive. And money's expensive too. Interest rates are high. It's difficult to finance some things with higher interest rates. So it really just depends on what the customer's budget is and what their needs are. But you can find some dynamite 5, 6, even 10-year-old boats on the used market.
And speaking of older boats, I have sort of a side question that maybe you don't know the answer. It's okay, but um, So when we look at the business model of buying a boat from the moorings or someone that charter company in the Caribbean where the boat's 5 years old and they offload all these boats, me buying, do you know anything about how that works? Where if I go in with my credit and I buy a brand new boat, and I say that in quotations because I'm
Mhm.
financially buying it, but they're going to own it for the first 5 years and they're going to charter it out. How does that work?
I don't have a lot of information about how that model works, but I do have some customers who have purchased boats and then entered them into the charter fleet as a way of kind of leasing back and recouping some of the cost. My understanding of it is if you own the boat and you lease it back to a charter company, many of those charter companies take on the responsibility of the maintenance and the safekeeping of the boat while the owner's away. And so I think it goes back to how reputable is that company? How well are they going to work for you? And in what condition will the boat be after X amount of years if you are thinking about selling it or taking it out of the charter fleet and using it yourself?
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of a shortcut into brand new boat ownership for some folks that I've talked to where they wouldn't have bought a boat outright for $500,000. But the charter company taking possession of the boat for the first 5 years makes it financially possible for them to do that. And then they get this boat spec'd out exactly how they wanted from
Right.
Bennett over from whoever.
I
So,
suppose a side consideration is where that boat's being used. If this is a Caribbean boat, there's storms. You don't need a lot of qualification to bareboat charter. And so consider who's been using the boat, how they've been using the boat. There's some horror stories out there about people chartering a boat and then finding that it was damaged by the previous charter group. So you don't really know what that is on the used market, but there you go. That's an important reason for a survey and inspections on the buy side.
so in all the boats that you're helping people sell, what can I do for my boat before I list it with you that would make it easier for you to sell it or be able to fetch more money when you do sell it?
Great question. Detailed maintenance records are always helpful. The conscientious sailor, the people that you're writing to in the magazine are all about how well something has been maintained. So having detailed records on oil changes, sail repair, rebedding hardware on the deck, all of the things that add up over time to a really well kept boat, I think is something that you can show a potential buyer and say, this is an owner who's really taking care of this boat. That adds some intrinsic value to the boat itself. In addition to that, making sure that it's clean, it's free of docking accident evidence, things like that, and then disclose what's wrong. If anything happened, you had to make some repairs, be honest about it. I think that's the thing that gives some folks a bad rap is we don't want to obfuscate or hide any blemishes on these boats. Let's be honest about the condition that they're in. Let's be frank with people, and and let's not find out later as a result of a bad survey.
I guess that brings us to surveys too. So when you're facilitating the purchase of a boat, can you talk to me about how the surveyor comes into play? And do you initiate that or does somebody else?
We to keep the process open and transparent, we generally don't recommend specific surveyors by name, but what we do is refer customers to the national accreditation organizations who publish names of surveyors. And generally what we can do is a geographic search. So somebody who's nearer to the boat, who's accredited, could come out and take a look. Marine surveys are really important, I think, elements in the process to make sure that the boat is what it's advertised to be and does what it's expected to do. But a caveat to that is a surveyor is going to adjudicate a boat against ABYC standards that are in effect on the day of the survey, which may not be the same as the standards that were in effect the day the boat was built. So when you read a survey report, you have to kind of keep that in mind. An example that we see quite a bit on the Great Lakes with boats built in the 80s and 90s is a shore power inlet cannot be further than 10 feet from the main breaker panel without a breaker in between. A lot of boats violate this simply because that rule didn't exist when the boat was manufactured. But it's to manufacturers' advantage to build boats to the standards that exist on the day of manufacture. That's something you really have to keep track of in marine survey. But as brokers, we help facilitate that. We actually recommend that buyers get a survey. Um, it's a good thing to have in hand for a couple of reasons. I like to use them as work lists. If there's something that pops up on a survey, and surveyors are trained to find stuff, you have a good list of things that you can go through and make a project list out of. Additionally, some insurers require it, not all, but some. And I think generally, if you have a survey and you're willing on the sell side to furnish that to a potential buyer, that goes another distance toward being transparent and honest with people. Surveys, in my opinion, are really wonderful things.
Absolutely. Um, Talk to me about money. So I want to finance a boat. Is it you said interest rates are not good right now. What's the world look like for this spring for people that need to finance?
Not good in the terms of they've been kinder to us last few years. They've been down lower than they are now. You can still get financed. You can still get a rate that's reasonable. We're now, having said that, we're not paying double-digit interest rates like we had in the 80s, but so we've been kind of spoiled a little bit over time. The forecast that we see tends to support the idea that interest rates will be at least stable, maybe decreasing over time, but you never really know. That's sort of a guessing game. We also guessed wrong, if you remember back to the pandemic, when all these new boaters would be offloading their boat after the pandemic. That hasn't happened. That was a prediction that ended up not bearing any fruit at all.
Do you guys see an influx of boats as people come back from the Caribbean or people come back from Europe? Because that's about to happen, right?
I do see a lot of customers. This is, I think, to the sport of sailing in particular, and to boating in general, people who go on vacation and have wonderful experiences on boats tend to be jazzier about getting a boat of their own when they come back home. So I talk to a lot of customers who have bareboat chartered who want to get into that in their backyard. Maybe not necessarily have to go to an exotic location to be able to do it, but have their own boat that they can enjoy time on the water. So we see quite a bit of that.
Okay, one last question. What's the hottest boat that it's going to be this summer? The hottest selling boat for this summer?
Oh my gosh, tough to predict. We're a Beneteau sail dealer. They just replaced the 38.1 Oceanus with a 37.1. That has the makings of a hot seller. I saw it in Annapolis. I absolutely loved it. I thought it had some great design touches that really make you think about 37 replacing a 38. That's smaller, right? In the ways that the spaces are designed, it's incredible how smaller boats are bigger now. I think that's going to be a good one. There aren't too many of them in the United States yet. Number 34 is scheduled to deliver to us at the end of the month here, but we'll see. J boats have some pretty interesting designs out this year. The J9, the J99, nice designs for the sportier folks. J9 is especially nice for people who want the performance but don't really want all the bruises. It's a nice day sailor. It has the performance that J boats is known for, and it's very docile at the same time.
I was on the it's the 37.1, right? The new Benny.
Correct.
I was on it in Miami. It's a really nice boat, and man, it looks like it's about a mile wide. When you stand
Yeah,
behind it with the gate down, it's an impressive boat.
and
Um,
the shower that they put in there is incredible too. It's huge.
and all this on a 37-foot boat is an immense amount of space inside that boat. I noticed that the galley is galley, down one side of the boat. Did that boat come with options, or is that what we get? We get the long galley on one wall.
That's typically the way that boat's set up. You can modify the number of cabins. You can get a 2 cabin or a 3 cabin layout.
Right. That's going to be a wild boat on the Great Lakes. I think it's fast and light and roomy and very, very good at entertaining. I was picturing, having like 10 people with wine glasses in the cockpit. It would have been fine.
You mentioned hunters from the 90s. That was the pinnacle back then, and it's become the norm now.
Yeah.
Like you made the point earlier. But yeah, these boats from the gate all have these nice features. You can bring people aboard, you can have company, and you can also go sailing and do some pretty nice performance at the same time. I'm looking forward to it. We're gonna have one this summer, so maybe we can meet up again and do a review of it.
I would love to, man. How do people find you if they watch this video and they end up wanting some help from you, or you have a boat that they want to see?
We've got a website that's pretty robust, rcryachts.com. Can go there. We've got listings for used boats that we're brokering as well as the new boats that we sell.
Patrick, RCR Yachts. I really want to thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. It's
Hey, likewise. And from somebody who's subscribed to Practical Sailor since he was a teenager, it's nice to be with you.